Hello and welcome to another episode of the Course Creators Podcast. It is absolutely wonderful to have you back, and today we are talking ancestry. Now, before you think this is going to be a bit of a history lesson, there is a lot to be said about understanding who we are, our past, where our roots are tied down from. They make up who we are as people. And if we can find ways to own our story, we can help more people. If we find ways to tell our story, where we've come from, who we are, where we've been, we can capture people's hearts and minds, as well as determine our branding, the way we're going to come across in our marketing material. It will help us in so many ways. One of the things I love to share is that I actually have a gypsy background. So for those of you who don't know what a gypsy is, please go and Google it. You might get some funny results. But what for me, this has become a big part of my story. You know, the gypsy girl, the gypsy culture, not being allowed to have an education, and then going on to becoming the youngest university director in Australian history. You know, this is what can make us special when we find out who we are and how we can tie that into what we do. So today we have Carol McCulloch, who is a specialized expert in the field of ancestry, and especially how you can go back and uncover and dig up your ancestral background to help you become a better leader, better teacher, better educator, better person, parent, friend, and everything in between. Carol, it is amazing to have you here today.
Thank you so much, Sarah. It's so exciting to be here. I have a background in Celtic ancestry, so we are storytellers from go to woe, and I have a lot to share with our listeners today. I'm really passionate about genealogy, family history, and I love the idea of you writing your own story. For me,
Amazing.
it's been an absolutely incredible journey. I found out so much more about myself, and I'm sure you will too.
Amazing. So for those people who this might be new to, when we say ancestry, what do we mean?
Oh, that's quite easy, really. We're talking your previous generations. So, step by step, going back through your parentage, your great grandparents, your grandfathers, grandmothers, and great great greats. So, these are your ancestors. And of course, the further you go back, the tree keeps widening, and you've got all of these ancestors making up your tribe. So, that's your ancestors, your tribe.
And why do you think, Carol, it's so important for us to understand who we are, what that tree is? Why does it matter?
Well, it matters to me in this way. I found out more about my traits, my skills, and my personality from looking at what has been handed down to me. I come from a long line of tailors, so now I understand where my needlework skills come from. I also come from very strong women in my Celtic roots. They are knowing women. Not quite the Wiccan, but certainly have some skills there that I ascribe for myself. So it helps me to understand why I think the way I do by looking at what's been handed down to me. Of course, we make our own way in the world, but these influences have very strong roots.
Incredible. And so I guess this can help us in so many ways, can't it? I mean, sometimes when we understand why we are the way that we are, when we understand where these characteristics, these personality traits, the way we respond and react to the world around us, when we can pinpoint what part of the tree that came from, it can really help us to, either overcome repetitive problems that we find ourselves in, or find ways to embrace our strengths and really, really push forward and shine with those strength areas that are natural to us, that literally are fed up through our roots inside and part of our souls and our history. But it can be really difficult to figure that initial stuff out if we don't know how to find out who our ancestors are. Now, as I've mentioned, I have a gypsy background, and traditionally that is a very transient community of people, and often haven't always registered themselves in wherever it is that we might have been born. And so I have found this, both an exhilarating, but also I feel that it's a complicated. I don't know. I just haven't got properly started with this process. So, Carol, I would love to know, for those of us who are leaders, who are educators, we want to kind of uncover our story, our ancestral lines, and get ideas about who we are so that we can start wrapping up our influencer style, our story as an influencer, as a leader, storytelling, story selling, all of those kinds of critical parts of being a leader and an influencer. Is it hard? And how and where can we go if we want to start kind of, digging deep and uncovering this background of who we are and where we're from?
It can be hard and it can be complex, but I have learned that it can be also simple and more direct because people haven't got the time anymore. I have spent the better part of 10 years in researching my own family. I don't expect everyone else to be able to have that amount of time. So we need to be able to do some quick research and some quick ways to find out where our ancestors are from and what their traits are. And so in the course that I've developed, and of course I did that in 30 days, thank you, Sarah. In that course, I'm really looking at some very quick ways for people to create a storyline based on some simple facts. And so that storyline is what you can research, not just using ancestry.com or Find My Past or any of those big tools. You can simply use Google, or even better, ask your living relatives for details. And you know what, Sarah? There are so many stories that our ancestors have sent down the line to us, and they come out as like myths, and we need to uncover those. So somewhere in my past, someone said to me, did you know about Grandma? She did that. Oh, really? And then you start thinking, okay, why did she do that? Let's go and find out. And Google becomes your best friend.
Amazing. And I think sometimes we really underestimate the power of the simple and free research tools that are actually available out there, and how much data is freely accessible. And so I know that we're not going to give away all the secrets, because Carole, you have created an online course which has some very special techniques that over the decades you have put together to help people uncover this magical story of who they are and how they can tie that into their lives. But you have created something. Now I know, because obviously I've been lucky enough to have a sneak peek into your incredible system, and you have created something called Ancestor Cards and Scores. You've got this methodology. How can I start writing my ancestor card, and what is it for those who haven't been lucky enough to get a sneak peek like me?
Yeah, the ancestral cards strategy is a really simple way to start collecting data, just little bits, the basic birth, death, marriage, and significant events. And you put them online in a tool called Trello. That's my chosen tool. You
Oh,
can
I
do it
love
in,
Trello.
yeah, you can do it in any kind of tool, but Trello has a unique way of allowing you to move the pieces around on the board. That's what they call the baseline, is the board. And you upload photos, maybe old certificates and so on, and you begin to build an ancestral card, and that card just has snippets of information. And the beauty of that is that you can share that with someone else, and it only takes them 5 minutes to read. Not everybody has the time to read a long family history story. They want something quick. I just want to know about great grandma. Tell me more. So an
Brilliant.
ancestral card is the way to go, and it's a very simple process, and it gets stored in the cloud, so you don't have to worry about losing things.
Yeah, and the great thing is, I guess, about platforms like that is people could contribute too. So, grandma might have told you something that she didn't tell me about. So I can go in and maybe add my own notes to the card that my sister created about grandma, right? So we can start pulling together all of our memories and all of the snippets of information we received.
You're so right, because that's the collaborative part. I've yet to explore that with my family members, and I'm thinking it would be probably more intriguing for the grandchildren who are teenagers rather than those who are more elderly now.
Yeah.
However, collaborating with them and getting them to add a card or some data into the card would be the way to go.
That's it. So obviously, as influencers, as leaders and educators, we are always being told that one of the best ways to inspire action, to create connection with our audiences, to be able to tie our story into our purpose and get that sense of purpose in our lives, but also to wrap that up in our brand. You know, our story is our brand. Who we are and where we've come from is our brand. We are our brand. So how can we, Carole, can you give us some advice? This has been your expertise for a long time. How can we look at the story that we have? What bits do we pick if we are going to kind of craft this message that creates our brand and then helps us create the products that we create and so on, and the courses that we create? How do we pick the right bits? And how do we confidently share that story with other people?
Let's deal with the choosing the best bits first. We're not writing a book. Well, we could, but in the first instance, you want to just write a short story about an ancestor. So you pick a moment in time, maybe a short period of time, maybe across a few years. We don't want to say, all right, great grandma Carole was born in 1812 and lived in No, we need to just say, did you know that in Grandma's life she had triplets? Do you really understand what that might have been like in the 1800s? And you begin with that little story. And so out of that, you pull out the strength of that person who gave birth to 3 children, one after the other, not all simultaneously, but in an era where the care and attention to mothers was not the same as we know today. So you get an idea of how strong that ancestor may have become. Now, I'm not saying that all of us have multiple births in our history. We have very different histories. So what you need to do is uncover some of those little facts and you build on them to create that sense of story around an event or around the person's particular lifestyle. It might be a very different kind of lifestyle. I remember my stories about my great-granduncle, who was the first genealogist in our family, and he got into a lot of strife because he didn't quite do it the right way. So that becomes another story on its own. So these are the way you can do it. Just pull out the strengths of your ancestors to become the story that influences you.
Lovely. And so where we were going to go with that next bit then is that, you know, once you've done that first part, you've pulled out those interesting elements and you can find a way to connect that back to yourself, whether it's, you know, you can kind of sense maybe common traits or common personality themes or whatever it might be. As an example, and I'd love to share this story actually with our listeners today. My grandmother is no longer with us, but I always found her one of the most inspiring people when it came down to her resilience. And I will never forget her telling me the story where my granddad was fighting in World War II. And obviously there was no communication, there was no contact for months and months and months. But my grandma absolutely had this dream to marry him when he returned, if he returned, and to build her little house and to put curtains up over the windows. So she got herself a job. She was typing in the communication centres and she saved up these pennies. Over a year went by. She hadn't heard from Granddad. She didn't know if he was alive or dead. There was no idea what was going to happen. And she finally got a message back that he was still alive. In that time, she had managed to get a little house. She had decorated it bit by bit with each bit of her wages, and the piece de resistance, she managed to get these curtains that she had pieced together with second-hand borrowed pieces of material and made these curtains that she always dreamed of, waiting for Granddad to come home. One day she was laying in her bed in London, and all of a sudden just these almighty explosions just everywhere went off. And a bomb dropped on the side of her house right next to her bed. It took the entire side of the building completely away entirely. And the only thing that was left was her on her bed, balancing on a tiny piece of floor that hadn't crumbled to the ground. The bomb did not explode. It simply, in one whole solid missile-shaped piece, just had dropped from the sky and dropped all the way through the front of her house. And she went outside. Obviously, she was devastated. Everything she had built that Granddad was about to come home and see had completely been decimated. gone. Like the whole lot was nothing but crumbled dust. And instead of crying and instead of beating herself up, she said to herself, that's okay. Granddad's still alive. I can go and make more curtains and more this and more that. But this was the best bit. She then went out into the garage and grabbed a bucket of white paint. And she then wrote on the bomb in capital letters, MISSED, missed. You missed me. She then got her brother, who was an old photographer at the time. They stood on top of the bomb in front of the completely smashed down property and stood on top of the bomb with a funny finger up in the air, basically saying, you missed us, you didn't get us, we're not dead and we will go on. And she made a massive laugh of it. And by the way, back then photography was illegal as well. And I have that photograph. My grandma gave it to me and she said, Sarah, every single time you feel like times get tough, you are resilient, and unless the bomb actually drops on you and then detonates, absolutely nothing should stop you from fulfilling your dreams and pushing forward. Unless that bomb actually goes off and kills you, you have no excuse to build the life that you want. And I have used that story as my ancestry to help me push through and be resilient, and now encourage other people to do the same. And this is why I believe it's so special to know who you are, because I can now connect myself to that longer line. It's almost like proof that I am qualified to go out and talk about resilience, I suppose. And so, Carole, what I want to ask you is, I've got so many little parts of my stories that I could pull in from all of those different ancestors. For everyone listening today, what are your top 3 tips for kind of creating that ancestral story that we can start using every day in our lives and businesses?
Your top 3 tips. Well, the first tip that I would suggest is that you make sure you share exactly what you just did then, Sarah. I now understand you so much more, given the resilient factor that your grandma taught you. So the first tip is to find the stories, write them up, and to share them. The sharing is what really does make a difference, because you are able to then influence a broader range of people, maybe in the first instance your family members, but then in your wider community. And it certainly is the best way to do it, by sharing your story. The second tip is to focus in on what it is that ancestor, that one ancestor story, needs to say to your audience. So you're drilling down, you're digging up the dirt, you are creating some intrigue, and you've got a plot happening. It's not all bland and ordinary. Bring in the goss. Tell people about what happened then and who did what and why. And that will help make that story really sing for the person who is going to read it. And of course, the third is how you're going to share that story, because it may not just be in writing. You could record your voice. You could tell the story of your ancestor. So many wonderful stories are heard online on the internet, and it's the voice that gives that extra little flip to the storyline. So you could record them for your ancestors, for your descendants, so that they have a better idea of exactly what it is that ancestor left for you.
Amazing.
And I go on and I actually help people to create larger stories built on those 3 things. So you've got the story, you then have the voice, and then the third element is the imagery. We've all got photos, we've all got our memory box, and we may have artifacts. And you put all that together and you can come up with a digital story that you can share anywhere. And that has become quite a trend in the last few decades, and I'm delighted to say that digital storytelling is alive and well. So I hope that's covered the 3 tips. Have I missed anything? Do you
That
have any
sounds
other questions?
amazing. And it's interesting as well, Carol, isn't it? Because some people aren't going to find out all the information. Some people are simply not going to be in a position to kind of get that stuff. But what you can do is there are no rules when it comes to writing stories. If you want to turn your family story into fiction, you could use inspiration from the characters from your past, or who you might imagine that they may have been, the types of characters you might imagine them to have been based on the very small things. Create a fiction story, just use your background as inspiration. What story would you like to tell based on what there is no rule to creativity, and I think this is where people they realize there is no limits to this. There's no right or wrong to this. It's about guessing where we are or where we're from if we don't have the facts.
Indeed, Sarah, you must have been reading my mind, or maybe you've been reading my other blogs, because that's exactly what I do. I take that base story of my ancestor and I imagine, and I go back in time and I think through what it was like to be that person, and I add a bit of fiction and I create a whole new story based on my ancestor. And so I do that in blog. And my blogs have become another way in which I share my passion for family history. And I have another course in the making because you've inspired me so much. I want to get the next one done. And that's the name of that one is Blogging in the Past Lane. And that will give people an idea of how you can create your stories like you were describing just then. Not all facts, a little bit of fiction. Let's spice it up a bit and put them on a blog and share it that way.
Better still, put them in a book and publish it. Amazing. And I love that. You've got your course coming out, Blogging in the Past Lane. I love it so much. Now, talking of courses, Carol, what a great segue, by the way. Carol has actually recently been on my 30-day concept to course group coaching program. Now, this is the program where I take a small group of people in only a few times a year. And in 30 days, I personally walk that group of people through creating their own online courses. So from the day they start, they have nothing but an idea, a concept. And by the day they finish, 30 days later, they have a published course. And Carol has done exactly that. Carol, first of all, a huge congratulations. Woo!
Thank you so much, Sarah. Look, it's been a wonderful trip. And you know what? I wished I had been in your course last year. I had designed my first course all by myself. I thought to myself, I can do this. Well, I did it, but no one came. Now this time round, I have you beside me and behind me pushing a little bit, and I have made much more progress. In 30 days to build this small Kickstarter project was wonderful.
It's been amazing. And so for you, how has the transition of sort of going online and creating these online programs been for you? How has the 30 days been as an experience?
I would thoroughly encourage other people to do it, because what it has done for me has made me stick to my guns. It has pushed me along. It's given me a support structure. It's given me support buddies who I can report in to. And it gives me the way in which I can make sure that I can keep working at it steadily. I also learned that trying to bite off more than you can chew is not the best way to start. And so your advice right in the beginning to reach out to others and ask them, what would you put in this course? That made such a big difference. I was able to prune off bits that I didn't need in this course, and they'll become another course. And I was able to focus in on the things that they did want. So the course generation process for me was, what would you say, catapulted, I think is the right word, catapulted into action. I have done Thinkific courses before, and I'm quite used to it over the years, but this process made a big difference in the way I executed all of the pieces that go up into planning for that course, and to build it in a way that makes sense to those I know who will be my audience.
Wonderful. And the drive, the energy, everything that you brought to the last 30 days, Carol, has been so amazing working beside you and watching your course be born in the 30 days. So a huge congratulations. Now, I would love to share Carol's course with you. Her course is called Family Story Magic. It is magic. I'm going to tell you that now. I have been lucky enough to have a peek inside and see what's there. And if you are at all interested in learning how to influence yourself, your followers, your students, if you want to create your brand based on those real roots that you are from, or indeed you aspire to become an author and you would like to use these story finding, story unearthing strategies that Carole shares to give you your basics and your structure for your own amazing, incredible story or biography, you have to come out and check out Carol's course. It is incredible. There is a link below this particular post. So in the show notes, there is a link below. If you're watching the video, there is a link below, and that will take you straight to Carol's Family Story Magic course. And I really, really recommend jumping in there to take a look. Carole, thank you so much today. Before you leave, do you have any kind of parting words for us?
Oh, the parting words. That reminds me of the song, The Parting Glass, which is a beautiful, beautiful song. But the parting gem for everybody who's watching this little video or podcast, I'm not sure what we're calling it, Sarah, but the parting gift for you is just get started. Don't think it's too hard. Take the easy way. Unearth some of those treasures. Go looking in places that you may not have thought about before, and go back to those other ones that you thought, they're no use to me. It's amazing what one photo looked at with different eyes can do to uncovering the facts about your ancestor. If you're writing about your ancestor, know them, get to know them very well. So that is my parting gift. Get to know your ancestors.
Wonderful. And for anyone who would like to follow Carole, go check out her websites and her blogs. Again, in the show notes below, there are links to all of Carole's website pages and where you can contact her, follow her, and find out more about what she offers and how she can help you with your ancestral digging up and adventures and exploration. And of course, to go and grab her brand new online courses that she's created here on the course, Concept to Course 30-day group coaching program. Carole, it's been an absolute honor and pleasure to have had you here today, and hopefully you've given people lots of food for thought, sown some little seeds, and inspired people to go open up the closets and have a look at where they're from. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sarah. And one last thing, you made such a difference to me when you asked the question, do I have a free gift for people today? I have pulled out all the stops today and finished it just in time to share with your listeners and readers.
Amazing. So, we have a free present. Who loves a free prize? Carole, what have you got for us? How wonderful.
The Ancestral Cards Workbook. Yay! It looks
for free. So we have the Ancestral Cards Workbook completely free of charge. I love it.
That is for all of you. And thank you so much, Sarah, for your inspiration, your support, and everything you do.
It's been an honor to have you to be part of your journey there, Carole. Fantastic. Go and check out all of the links below and you can grab yourself that workbook for free. How generous. Thank you very much for listening, and I'll see you again on another episode of the Course Creators Podcast. Until then, keep growing, keep leading, keep edupreneuring, and we'll see you real soon. Bye-bye for now.